BBC viewers took to social media to savage the broadcaster over its biased audience. The BBC has been savaged by viewers over claims of audience bias after Nigel Farage endured a bruising question time showdown. Taking to Birmingham, host Fiona Bruce informed viewers that the audience had been selected to represent a mix of political sentiment, including many who are still making up their mind, and supporters of both the Greens and Reform. However, supporters of Mr Farage, who is now polling over 20% according to a poll for The Express this afternoon, were nowhere to be seen. The audience tore into the controversial leader, with accusations that he is personally racist. They jeered and laughed at him, with just one Leave voting voice heard during the half-hour drubbing. Green Party co-leader Adrian Ramsey, who is polling in single figures, had a much easier ride by contrast. Furious supporters of Mr Farage took to social media this evening to vent at the BBC for what they perceived to be a bias from the audience. GB News broadcaster Patrick Christys said, "This BBC audience is one of the most ridiculous things I've ever seen. It's simply not representative of the views of wider society." Former MEP and right-wing commentator Patrick O'Flynn scolded, "I think him right in saying not a single person in that BBC audience applauded anything Nigel Farage said. Reminds me of doing BBC QT for UKIP in Clacton on the day of the Clacton by-election. UKIP won with 60% of the vote, but only 2 sympathisers were in the lab-packed audience." User Steve Richards fumed, "How do the BBC manage to get away with a balanced audience?" Quote. "That was an audience straight out of the Corbyn High School. Surely Ofcom needs to look at the BBC and its claims of neutrality. It was an absolute biased disgrace." A pro-reform account called The Unionist said they have cancelled their BBC direct debit as a result of the broadcast, blasting, "Absolutely no way I will pay towards such a biased, undemocratic organisation." User Paul Brads noticed the difference in treatment between Mr Farage and the Green leader, tweeting, "How strange. The Greens that are polling to get one seat get rapturous applause from BBC. But Reform, who are polling second in the country, not one clap. Such a biased audience." Talk TV host James Whale MB joined the chorus of anger, saying, "Can't believe the biased audience that the BBC have got on this so-called they show. Obviously they really want to bait Nigel Farage. How can this be a fair election debate?" A Conservative Party councillor in Sutton Coldfield, Marian Jenkins, even blasted the BBC over their unfair treatment of Nigel Farage. Councillor Jenkins slammed, "Listening to the BBC audience attacking Nigel. Has there ever been a more biased and unrepresentative audience in history? Please somebody end the TV licence. It takes something for the BBC to shock me with their bias, but they certainly managed it tonight."